At the beginning of the session, I had told you how does a charged particle experience the force due to the magnetic field, and I had warned you then that the charged particle should have the velocity, because the force experienced by such a charged particle in a given magnetic field would be given by q v cross b, right. So, now let us read the problem and see how does this connect with the problem. A charged particle is released from rest in a region that has uniform electric as well as magnetic field parallel to each other. The particle will move in a straight line, a circle, helix and cycloid. See, you should underline the point here that the charged particle is released from rest. So, you have not given any velocity to the charged particle at all, and had there been no electric field, then the force that it would experience due to the magnetic field would have been straight away 0, because q v cross b, v is not there, therefore, the charged particle will experience 0 force. But what he has said is there is an electric field, and electric field does not differentiate between whether the charged particle is at rest or already moving and having some velocity. So, due to the electric field, the charged particle would start experiencing the force. Now, he has not told you what charged particle it is. Therefore, if it is positive, it would experience the force in the direction of the electric field and start moving, accelerating rather and picking up velocity. If it would be a negatively charged particle, then it would experience the force opposite to the field and accelerate and pick up the velocity. So, in any case, because of the presence of the electric field, the charged particle would accelerate and pick up the velocity, and once it picks up the velocity, then it may experience the force due to the magnetic field. So, okay. So, now you underline the second important point in the given problem, that is the magnetic field and the electric field are parallel to each other. If the magnetic field is parallel to the electric field and the charged particle is moving along the electric field, either in the direction of the field or opposite to the field, the angle between velocity of the charged particle and the magnetic field would be either 0 or 180 degree. Therefore, the force experienced by the charged particle due to the magnetic field would be 0, and therefore, the particle would continue to move in a straight line either in the direction of the electric field or opposite to the direction of the electric field. So, that makes the correct option as the A option. See, here is a question connected with the sensitivity of a galvanometer. Let us read the question. Then I will give you the formula for the sensitivity, current sensitivity of a galvanometer, and then I think verify the options. Choose the wrong statement. The sensitivity of a moving coil galvanometer can be increased by increasing the number of turns in the coil, inserting a soft iron cylinder inside the coil, increasing the strength of the field, using suspension fiber of a higher couple per unit twist. Okay, so let me first give you the formula for the current sensitivity so that we can pick up the right options. See, current sensitivity IS, I for current and S for sensitivity of a moving coil galvanometer is defined by N B A by K, where N is the number of turns, B is the strength of the field and K is the couple per unit twist. So, now if you start reading the options, I think it will help you to pick up the right option. But remember, he is pointing out that which is the wrong statement. So, if you increase the number of turns, the current sensitivity will definitely increase, because the number of turns is in the numerator directly proportional to the current sensitivity of the galvanometer. Now, if you insert a soft iron cylinder, you will be increasing the permeability, and therefore, certainly the field produced would be much more stronger, and that is also being in the numerator, current sensitivity would definitely be increased. So, even second option is also perfect. Increasing the strength of the field, that is still more direct, because B is also in the numerator. Therefore, to increase the current sensitivity, the field should become much more stronger. Now, lastly, he says using a suspension fiber of a higher couple per unit twist. So, this K in the denominator here is basically the couple per unit twist constant of the suspension fiber that you have used. Now, if you increase that K, the current sensitivity will go down. Therefore, the correct option here is D. But remember, you have chosen the wrong statement among the following 4 options. So, D option is correct. will discuss something about rotational motion. See, this concept of considering a body to be a particle is valid as long as you are discussing translatory motion associated with the particle. The moment you land into rotational motion, you are no more allowed to consider the body to behave like a particle. And one best example of pure rotational motion is your fan. A fan whose axis remains fixed in the ceiling at a particular point and the whole fan rotates about that particular axis. You can call the fan to be a body rotating about a fixed axis, and therefore its fixed axis rotation are also called as pure rotation. So, the fan as a body rotates and all the particles belonging to the fan will undergo circular motion. They will have different radii, of course, depending on their distance from the axis. Greater the distance of the particle from the axis, bigger will be the circle that the particle is going to describe. So, here you get to understand a link between circular motion and rotational motion. Remember, circular motion was a part of translatory motion, wherein you were allowed to consider the body to be a particle, and now this is rotational motion, and in that I told you about pure rotational motion wherein the axis remains fixed and the whole body goes round and round about that particular axis. When you discuss about rotational motion, it is not just the mass which matters. What matters is something more than the mass called as moment of inertia. So, you can say moment of inertia is something like what was mass in a translatory motion. So, mass in translatory motion is equivalent to moment of inertia in rotational motion. Fine. So, this moment of inertia does not just depend on the mass, but also depends on its distribution around the axis of rotation. It also depends upon what axis have you chosen about which the whole body is going to rotate. So, then we have some standard formulae for moment of inertia of certain bodies. You can say regular geometrical shapes. For example, if you take a straight rod of length L, see when I say a rod of length L, I am neglecting the area of cross section. You can say area of cross section is very negligible in comparison with the length that it has. Now, such a rod about an axis passing through the middle point of the rod and taken perpendicular to the length of the rod will have a moment of inertia mL square divided by 12, where m stands for the uniformly distributed mass, L for the length, and divided by 12 will come out of the derivation. So, mL square by 12 is the formula for moment of inertia of a rod about an axis passing through its midpoint and perpendicular to its length. Similarly, we have moment of inertia of a solid sphere, we have moment of inertia of a hollow sphere, moment of inertia of a ring. But when I say ring, the axis is chosen perpendicular to the plane of the ring and passing through its center. Similarly, moment of inertia of a disc, again about what axis? Axis passing through its center and perpendicular to the plane of the disc. So, all these are ready-made formulae which you can always remember, and then we can also go ahead and do a slight modifications in these using what are called as parallel and perpendicular axis theorems. So, these two theorems are very important, but one warning I would love to give about these two theorems is parallel axis theorem can be applied for a solid body also, whereas perpendicular axis theorem can be applied only for a plane lamina. Please remember this, never go ahead and use perpendicular axis theorem for any solid body, use it only for a plane lamina. What I mean by plane lamina is only a two-dimensional figure, and parallel axis theorem can be used even for solid bodies. These two theorems will help us shift the moment of inertia or write the moment of inertia of the same bodies, regular geometrical shapes that I was referring just now, about any other axis. So, let us see some beautiful problems there as an application of these two theorems for writing the moment of inertia. Right. So, that is what we are going to start now. In this episode, we will discuss about rotational motion, rotational kinetic energy. See, when we said kinetic energy in translatory motion, it was only half mv square, whereas the equivalent kinetic energy here in rotational motion should be something associated with rotation plus something associated with translation. So, it should be half I omega square plus half mv square. That is how we will write the total kinetic energy associated with a body which is rotating as well as translating. The best example for combined rotation and translation would be the wheels of the vehicle which is going on the road. They will be rotating about their axle and they will also be translating along with the whole vehicle. Fine. So, rotational kinetic energy, and then the moment of inertia, parallel axis theorem, perpendicular axis theorem. So, these are certain things which we are going to discuss in this episode. Fine, good luck. To start with, let me take a very simple problem, introducing you people to torque. Now, what is torque exactly? How is torque written? Now, what does a torque do? See, torque is given by the formula R cross F, where R is the position vector of the point of application of the force F. And when I say position vector, naturally there will be a reference in your mind. So, about the origin of reference you can say. So, the torque can be written about the origin of reference. Fine. What does a torque do? A torque will produce a turning effect, or a torque is the cause for the rotation to happen. A force is the cause for translation to happen, and a torque is the cause for rotation to happen. Fine. So, let me use the formula for the torque and see how we can write the torque here. So, I said torque is R cross F, and R is given to be I minus 2j plus k cross, and F is given to be 5I plus 2j minus 5k. Fine. So, if you take the cross product, I hope you remember how to take the cross product. It will be I j k and then 1 minus 2 1 and then 5 2 and minus 5. What you get is 8 I cap plus 10 j cap plus 12 k cap, which makes the first option perfectly correct.